Hello everyone, hola! Clearly, something is happening in cyberspace that begs closer inspection from a music education perspective. Written in 2009 by Janice Waldron, this statement remains true, though perhaps we might swap cyberspace for the internet, metaverse, or decentralized web. Janice's passion for community music, folk music practices, and Irish traditional music in particular, combined with her curiosity, openness to how people's music engagement evolves along with societal and technological change, and a little bit of serendipity, led to 2 decades of closer inspection of things that were happening online and offline. Janice, like many of us, thought that students in K-12 contexts should have opportunities to engage in more expansive ways that reflect how people know and do music throughout society and the world. While most of her research focused on offline and online music communities of practice outside of K-12 settings, she suggested that music educators acknowledge and adopt how people learn and do music in community music contexts, and argued that music educators should support students in developing capacities to engage flexibly as musicians and to navigate and negotiate the media and platforms where they might connect with others across time and place. In the spirit of ongoing dialogue and connection with Janice, and to invite critical engagement with issues and possibilities that are arising or might arise with emerging and already here socio-technical systems, I'll build upon and mobilize Janice's scholarship in conversation with current things that are happening in cyberspace and imaginations of possible near futures of music learning and teaching. And in the spirit of embodying concepts important to Janice's work, such as participatory culture, collective and networked learning, gift giving, and paying it forward, I'm sharing my notes on Janice's publications, some of which I'm visualizing in this presentation, my process of preparing for this panel, and this video that I'll expand on in the future for anyone interested, and you can access it via a link that I'll share at the end. I also invite you to reflect on the complexities and possibilities of if more of us shared our process, notes, and resources in addition to our presentations and publications, echoing participants' engagement in Janice's research of people learning and doing music in online and offline communities of musical practice. In other words, how might we contribute in more expansive and nonlinear ways to communities of music education practice, and how might the types of sharing cultures indicative in communities of musical practice inspire new ways of doing scholarship for all of us? As Janice suggested, and I concur, music educators often have reactionary approaches to new and emerging technologies, sometimes latching onto superficial media coverage and technological determinism. Technological determinism is the common societal habit to anthropomorphize technology by assigning it human characteristics such as agency, or claiming that technology itself exercises causal influence on social practice. Deterministic perspectives and assertions cut both ways, with some celebrating new technological systems without reflecting on the socio-cultural historical context around technology, and others dismissing technology that does not fit into their current schema or expectations of what technology should do, or what musicking, learning, and teaching should be. Both ends of this continuum can share in common celebrations and critiques without engaging with the technology, or interacting with communities engaging with these technologies, or in some cases, delving more deeply beyond the headlines. To avoid a deterministic perspective, it is important to consider the complex set of relationships and practices at play where the effectiveness, usefulness, and experiential meanings of technologies in context are determined. Janice argued that it is easy to make technology the target of our hopes and anxieties. Newness makes it the perfect punching bag, but one of the hardest and yet most important things we as a society must think about in the face of technological change is what has really changed and what has not. Being part of networked publics is complicated. The realities do not fit into neat utopian or dystopian frames, nor will eliminating technology solve the problems we encounter. Janice urged music educators to take nuanced perspectives and engage in closer inspection and inquiry with emerging ways that people know and do music through digital media and networks. For about 2 decades, Janice offered rich accounts of how people engaged in networks and communities of practice with social media, YouTube videos, forums, websites, and each other through participatory culture practices to learn and do music. I'm suggesting that we engage in closer inspection and inquiry with emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and virtual reality, along with augmented and extended reality, acknowledging that we need to address related issues of equity and access. Janice argued that in our eagerness to embrace the virtues of the new, we sometimes fail to critically examine the a priori of the very thing we are extolling. Exuberant positive narratives alone are not enough. Success in changing a dominant paradigm, no matter what that may be, requires transparency and critical reflection on the part of those doing the advocating. In speculating about possible futures of music education with artificial intelligence and virtual reality, I want to acknowledge the relationship between these technologies and issues around the environment and sustainability, which is a similar issue with pretty much all of the technology that we are using, but also extends into the processes that occur in relation to artificial intelligence and virtual reality that we certainly need to think through. I also want to acknowledge the pressing issues around equity, such as inequities in terms of resources and access, along with racial and other biases that humans extend into and through technologies, and how people interact with AI and VR. There are scholars and communities addressing these issues, and we can build on their work. Given the complexities of emerging socio-technical systems in relation to the environment and sustainability, racism, white supremacy, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, corporate interests, and countless other issues to address, why consider possibilities of music education with artificial intelligence and virtual reality? As Janice did with social media, online communities, and YouTube videos, I think it is important that we work to understand the implications and possibilities of emerging technologies to determine responsible, ethical, and equitable ways of engaging with artificial intelligence and virtual reality, guiding students' engagement with these and other technologies, understanding when and how not to work with these technologies, and how to align relationships among music education and emerging technologies with our values. I also think that close and critical inspection combined with creative thinking and engagement may support us in determining the possibilities of artificial intelligence and virtual reality for expanding music engagement and learning in ways that students might find meaningful and positive. One way of engaging in critical reflection is playing out possible futures to encounter contextualized issues that we might need to address. And as I move into some speculative work here, I want to be clear that in imagining possible futures, or in some cases reflecting on current realities, I'm not suggesting that these futures are necessarily preferable. Playing out possible futures with emerging technologies, in dialogue with the scholarship of Janice and others, can be helpful in, at minimum, avoiding deterministic or under-nuanced perspectives and decisions, and also for working through complexities of music learning and teaching in a rapidly changing society. This might help us be nimble and thoughtful rather than caught off guard or reactionary as emerging socio-technical systems interact with music education. Imagine some schools where students are interested in digital music making, others in typical K-12 instrumental and vocal ensemble engagement, others in heritage music practices, perhaps mariachi or old-time music, and a handful in singer-songwriting type engagement. While most typical music programs have compartmentalized curricular structures that support particular types of music and musical engagement, we might imagine a program that embraces a more comprehensive curricular structure that allows for and supports diverse forms of musical engagement and learning in the same setting, what I refer to as a hybrid classroom or hybrid program. One of the issues at play in educators choosing to support or not support diverse ways of knowing and doing music, in addition to their personal interests and willingness, is their perceived capacity to support forms of musical engagement of which they have little to no experience, understanding, or skills. The music teachers in these schools might have some basic knowledge of some of these practices, but might also seek support from local individuals or organizations through partnerships to augment their own lack of expertise. We currently have plenty of models of this in which music programs collaborate with culture bearers or artists to support both music educators and students and engage with music and musical practices in ways that are culturally relevant, culturally sustaining, and ethical through collaboration. With Janice's work on online and offline communities of practice in mind, we might imagine a near future in which schools network with their own local communities and with schools in different physical locations, facilitated through digital platforms, connecting students across schools through forming new communities of musical practice. In reconfiguring and expanding who facilitates learning, music educators might collaborate to support each other's students, distributing their expertise while identifying ways that they might connect and exchange support from their local communities. In some cases, such school partnerships exist, as well as similar networks that connect schools to composers or other experts as far back as the Vermont MIDI Project or composers in electronic residence, among other ways that schools, students, educators, and others connect with one another. In the near possible future, we might imagine individual or small groups of students present physically in a classroom engaging musically and socially in different virtual reality immersive environments, together with peers, educators, community musicians, as communities of musical practice that might not exist in their local community, but are supported through network technology. Perhaps in one moment rehearsing heritage music practices, or producing music in an immersive studio setting that does not exist physically, and several moments later reconnecting and converging with their local learning community in the physical place of their classroom, maybe sharing what they were doing and learning in their groups. We might also imagine possible near futures where teachers might leverage artificial intelligence to identify where they are needed most among groups of students, where artificial intelligence might surface relevant information or resources to students just in time, responding to their engagement. Students might create music with AI and each other, while others develop instrumental facility and technique with the support of AI. Educators and community musicians might facilitate student explorations and discussions of how people interact with artificial intelligence, developing students' critical media literacies while addressing issues of race, class, power, creative rights, and potential harms that people cause through their use of technology. These and other possible futures invite closer inspection of the affordances, constraints, and issues around artificial intelligence and virtual reality, along with the ways that people are currently engaging and might engage in the future with these socio-technical systems. Imagining such possible futures also provides contexts for inquiry. Extending from Janice's work and the brief speculative futures I just shared, here are some possible lines of inquiry that we can also put in dialogue with issues of ethics and equity. And for the sake of time today, I'll pose 3 questions with some context. 1. Who might be music educators? Where might they be located? And when and how might they facilitate engagement and learning in future networked music programs? For instance, if networked music programs were to exist as a possibility, how might we rethink typical structures of programs in terms of who is hired as a music educator? Might a school or district hire someone or some people to be on retainer as support for programs, moving fluidly among programs, or perhaps hired within a program for longer-term partnership? How might community music programs and cultural organizations reconfigure what are currently outreach initiatives that temporarily present to a program or invite a program to a performance? What might longer-term or more flexible nonlinear support be like? What might music educator cooperatives be like, and how might the notion of a studio or itinerant instrumental music teacher who pushes into schools be reimagined in connection with schools, parks and rec programs, cities, or states? What roles might music teacher education programs play in more networked K-12 programs? How might the development of curated resources play a role in who, how, what, when, and why people facilitate music engagement and learning as they do? We might look to Janice's work to consider varied types of collaborations among music educators and others that could support new configurations of who might facilitate learning in and out of school music programs. 2. How might we understand and address presence, embodiment, and community in networked music programs in which learning and engagement occur across different scales of time and place? For instance, Janice suggested we think about the concepts of absent presence and present absence. Absent presence, in which extensive technology use means that people can be physically in one place while their social attention and communication focus is elsewhere, and present absence, where those who are not physically there can be incorporated into the group. Stating or assuming that students immersed in a virtual reality environment are disconnected from one another is different than wondering about how and to what and to whom students might be connected or could be connected when immersed in virtual reality. In the networked music program I'm describing, students might be temporarily absent from their peers in their immediate physical place, while simultaneously being present with others in an immersive online place, along with peers, teachers, and others who might also be absent from those in their physical places. Community and connection may be occurring, but in ways that music educators tend not to consider pedagogically or curricularly in current music programs. Similarly, we might consider how students engaging with virtual reality, or more likely at first with augmented reality, in a classroom may be present both physically and attentively, but in a way that extends their access to resources, information, or forms of engagement through the overlay of augmented or virtual reality in the physical place of the learning environment. 3. How might our roles change and morph in connection with technologies such as artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and what might this mean for pedagogy and curriculum? For instance, can artificial intelligence provide information and instruction that a human can? And where might the threshold be when a human takes over from artificial intelligence or toggles back and forth with artificial intelligence in supporting students developing skills and understanding? Thinking back to presence, place, embodiment, and attention with augmented and virtual reality, we might wonder how music educators might facilitate music engagement and learning in a context in which students are moving in and out of physical and online places and moving in and out of attentive presence, and what this might mean in terms of collaborative and distributed support and facilitation across varying timeframes in networked contexts. For instance, how might a teacher keep track of where a student is, what they are doing, and then determine when, why, and how to support that student? When might a music educator choose to help curate and create resources, point a student to a particular resource, allow artificial intelligence or someone else in a networked virtual reality community to support the student, or support a student directly with instruction or inquiry? For me, this feels similar to how many music educators facilitate project-based learning, but with added layers of spatial and temporal dimensionality. But we might imagine this being very difficult for music educators who teach primarily as directors in teacher-centered or highly sequenced and structured programs. As Janice suggests, it is important to recognize that we, and more important, our students, now live in this newly socially sanctioned technological reality along with its space of flows. If music teaching is to retain its relevancy in formal institutions now and in the near future, as with all paradigm shifts, some practices will become obsolete, others will expand, while new ones will be created. Thinking through how music educators' roles might adapt and morph in relation to artificial intelligence and virtual reality allows us to complicate oversimplified media narratives of technology replacing teachers and other jobs, but simultaneously consider what music teaching and similar types of roles, positions, and careers might be like in the context of networked music programs that interact with artificial intelligence and virtual reality. We might also consider what might happen when music teachers have difficulty reimagining and adapting their curriculum and pedagogy in relation to socio-technical systems and their intersection with music programs. We might have a role to play in supporting music educators' capacities to be nimble and flexible for future change while informed by principles, values, and an understanding of the implications of these socio-technical systems for both music education and society. Clearly, something is happening in cyberspace that begs closer inspection from a music education perspective. At the present time, while recording this video, I think it is important for us to be at the table, thinking through and engaging with these issues and socio-technical systems, lest at minimum we be left behind wondering what happened, whether due to corporate or other external interests driving decision-making and applications in the field, or an inability for us to keep up or connect with how people engage with music and each other in society, or our ability to be relevant or play a role in how young people and others engage with these technologies regardless of whether we include them in our programs. Janice's work in online and offline community music, social media, and people creating and sharing media and music began with curiosity, checking things out by lurking, and then immersing herself in communities of practice that she thought had implications for more expansive approaches to music learning and teaching. We might consider doing some of this as well. In 2018, Janice shared that the opportunities that social networking systems and social media platforms now offer music learning, teaching, and performance are already mind-boggling compared to what was available 10 years ago. We can only continue to imagine and envision what may be coming in the near future. As you imagine and envision what may be coming in the near future, here's a link to check out some notes on Janice's work and related resources. Whether artificial intelligence, virtual reality, or other technologies emerge, we can honor Janice's work by imagining, envisioning, and seeking to better understand how people engage musically and learn with socio-technical systems, balancing critical perspectives with openness to possibilities for music learning and teaching. And here's the actual link to those resources. Thank you all, and thank you, Janice.